The morning mist hung low over the Gloucestershire countryside as Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews drove through the wrought iron gates of Rayfield Manor. The sprawling estate belonging to Queen Camilla had been quiet for weeks, with the Queen Consort traveling abroad on royal duties. What should have been a routine security check was about to become one of the most extraordinary discoveries in modern royal history. Royal Protection Officer James Harrison had served the crown for 15 years, but nothing in his training had prepared him for what he would find that September morning. As the senior officer responsible for the estate's security during the Queen Consort's absence, James conducted his weekly perimeter check with military precision. The autumn air carried the scent of dying leaves as he walked the familiar paths around the manor house. The estate itself was a testament to centuries of British aristocracy. Built in 1847, Rayfield Manor had passed through several noble families before being acquired by the royal household. Its red brick facade and ivy-covered walls spoke of tradition and permanence, while the perfectly manicured gardens stretched for acres in every direction. James had walked these grounds countless times, but today felt different somehow. As he approached the eastern wing of the manor, James noticed something unusual. One of the basement windows, typically secured and barely visible beneath the climbing roses, appeared to have shifted slightly. The heavy wooden frame that should have been flush against the stone wall had moved inward by perhaps an inch. For a trained protection officer, such details were never insignificant. James immediately radioed for backup and contacted Detective Inspector Matthews. Protocol demanded that any security anomaly at a royal residence be treated with utmost seriousness. Within 30 minutes, Matthews arrived with a small team of investigators and additional royal protection officers. Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews had built her reputation on attention to detail and an intuitive understanding of human nature. At 42, she had investigated everything from art theft to international espionage, but royal cases always carried extra weight. The monarchy's security was not just about protecting individuals, it was about safeguarding centuries of history and tradition. As Matthews examined the displaced window, she noticed that the disturbance was not recent. Moss and small insects had begun to settle in the gap, suggesting the movement had occurred weeks, possibly months earlier. This was not a break-in or recent tampering, but something far more intriguing. The basement of Rayfield Manor had not been fully explored in decades. Historical records showed that it had been used for storage during both world wars, when many country estates served as repositories for valuable items evacuated from London. After the wars, much of the stored material had been returned to its original locations, but some items had inevitably been forgotten or lost in the bureaucratic maze of post-war reconstruction. James carefully pried open the window frame, while Matthews documented every step with photographs. The opening revealed a narrow passage that led to a storage room deep beneath the manor's foundation. The air that escaped carried the musty scent of aged wood and something else, the distinct smell of old leather and metal polish that any royal household staff member would recognize. Armed with powerful flashlights and wearing protective gear, Matthews and James descended into the basement storage area. The beam of Matthews' torch illuminated stone walls lined with wooden shelving units that stretched from floor to ceiling. Most of the shelves were empty, covered in decades of dust and cobwebs, but along the far wall, covered by heavy canvas sheets, were shapes that immediately caught their attention. The first item they uncovered was a mahogany chest bearing the royal cipher of Queen Elizabeth II Mother, the Queen Mother. The brass fittings were tarnished but intact, and the chest was secured with an ornate lock that bore the royal arms. Matthews felt her pulse quicken as she realized the potential significance of their discovery. James, meanwhile, had moved to examine other covered objects. He carefully lifted a canvas sheet to reveal an exquisite writing desk, its surface inlaid with mother-of-pearl and precious woods. Even in the dim basement light, the craftsmanship was extraordinary. The desk bore small brass plaques indicating it had once belonged to Queen Victoria herself. As they continued their exploration, the magnitude of the discovery became clear. This was not simply forgotten furniture or random storage items. They had uncovered what appeared to be a collection of royal treasures that had been lost to official records for decades. Each item they examined carried markings, inscriptions, or characteristics that linked it to various members of the royal family throughout the 20th century. Matthews immediately contacted her superior, Chief Inspector William Thornton, who had experience with royal matters dating back to the 1980s. Thornton understood the delicate nature of such discoveries, and the need for absolute discretion until the items could be properly authenticated and catalogued. Within hours, a team of royal historians and art experts had been quietly assembled. Dr. Margaret Whitfield, the Royal Collection's chief curator, arrived from Windsor Castle with several assistants. Her reaction upon seeing the basement collection was one of barely contained excitement, mixed with professional skepticism. Dr. Whitfield had spent 30 years cataloging and maintaining the royal collection, and she knew better than anyone which items had been missing from official inventories. As she examined each piece with practiced expertise, her excitement grew. These were not reproductions or items of questionable provenance. They appeared to be genuine pieces from the royal collection that had somehow been separated from the main inventory decades earlier. The writing desk, upon closer examination, revealed a hidden compartment containing letters written in Queen Victoria's distinctive handwriting. The mahogany chest contained jewelry, including a tiara that matched descriptions of pieces worn by the Queen Mother but never officially catalogued. Most remarkable of all was a set of ceremonial swords that had belonged to various royal dukes, each bearing engravings that told the story of British royal history. As word of the discovery spread through the small circle of royal officials and investigators, questions began to arise about how such valuable items had come to be stored in the basement of Queen Camilla's estate. The manor had been in royal hands for only 15 years, having been purchased as a private retreat for then Prince Charles and Camilla shortly before their marriage. Historical research revealed that Rayfield Manor had been owned by the Pemberton family from 1923 to 2010. Lord Pemberton had been a close friend of the royal family and had served in various ceremonial roles during his lifetime. During World War II, the manor had indeed been used to store valuable items evacuated from London, but official records suggested all items had been returned by 1947. Dr. Whitfield theorized that some items might have been overlooked during the post-war return process, particularly if they had been stored in areas of the basement that were not easily accessible. The Pemberton family, she suggested, might not have known about the items or might have assumed they belonged to the estate rather than the crown. The discovery raised immediate questions about ownership and legal rights. While the items appeared to belong to the royal collection based on their markings and provenance, they had been found on property owned by Queen Camilla. The legal implications were complex, involving questions of property law, royal prerogative, and historical precedent. Matthews coordinated with royal lawyers and government officials to ensure that the discovery was handled according to proper protocol. The basement was sealed and placed under round-the-clock guard while experts continued their examination and authentication process. Every item was photographed, measured, and documented in meticulous detail. The emotional impact of the discovery was perhaps as significant as its material value. These were not simply valuable objects, but tangible connections to royal family members who had shaped British history. The letters in Queen Victoria's writing desk included personal correspondence that provided new insights into her private thoughts and relationships. The Queen Mother's jewelry carried with it memories of state occasions and family celebrations. For Queen Camilla herself, the discovery presented both opportunity and challenge. The treasures had been found on her property, but they clearly belonged to the broader royal heritage. Her response would be closely watched by both the royal household and the public, as it would reflect her understanding of her role as queen consort and custodian of royal tradition. As the first day of investigation drew to a close, Matthews reflected on the extraordinary nature of the discovery. In her 15-year career, she had never encountered anything quite like this combination of mystery, history, and royal significance. The basement of Rayfield Manor had yielded treasures beyond imagination, but it had also raised questions that would take months, perhaps years, to fully answer. James Harrison, meanwhile, continued his security duties with a new awareness of the history that surrounded him. The routine security check that had led to the discovery reminded him that even in the modern age, the British monarchy continued to hold surprises. The treasures they had found were not just objects of material value, but symbols of continuity and tradition that connected the present royal family to their historical legacy. The investigation was far from over. Each item would need to be thoroughly authenticated, its history traced, and its legal status determined. The process would involve historians, art experts, lawyers, and royal officials working together to piece together the story of how these treasures had come to rest in the basement of a Gloucestershire manor house. As night fell over Rayfield Manor, the basement remained under guard, its newly discovered treasures safe but still shrouded in mystery. The discovery had already sent ripples through the royal household and government circles, but the full story was yet to be told. Tomorrow would bring new revelations as experts delved deeper into the collection and began to unravel the fascinating tale of the late Queen's lost treasures. The second day at Rayfield Manor began before sunrise as Dr. Margaret Whitfield and her team of Royal Collection experts arrived with specialized equipment for a thorough examination of the basement treasures. The morning air was crisp and filled with anticipation as additional security measures were put in place to ensure complete privacy during the authentication process. Dr. Whitfield had spent a sleepless night researching historical inventories and missing item reports dating back to the 1940s. Her preliminary examination the previous day had convinced her that they were dealing with genuine royal artifacts, but the authentication process would require scientific analysis, historical verification, and careful documentation of every detail. The basement had been transformed overnight into a temporary conservation laboratory. Portable lights eliminated the shadows that had hidden the treasures for decades, while humidity and temperature controls protected the delicate materials. Each item was carefully moved to examination tables where it could be studied under proper conditions without risk of damage. The first item to undergo detailed analysis was Queen Victoria's writing desk. Dr. Whitfield and her assistant, Emma Richardson, who specialized in 19th-century royal furniture, began by examining the construction techniques, wood types, and metal fittings. The desk showed clear signs of royal craftsmanship, with attention to detail that was characteristic of pieces made for the royal household during Victoria's reign. Hidden within the desk's secret compartment were not only letters, but also small personal items that provided intimate glimpses into Queen Victoria's private life. A small silver locket contained a miniature portrait of Prince Albert, while a leather-bound notebook contained what appeared to be personal observations about court life and political matters. These items had never been catalogued in any royal inventory, making their discovery even more significant. The letters themselves were a treasure trove of historical information. Written in Victoria's distinctive handwriting, they included correspondence with family members, political figures, and close friends. One letter, dated 1887, discussed her concerns about the future of the monarchy and her hopes for her descendants. Another, written shortly before Albert's death, revealed her deep emotional dependence on her beloved husband and her fears about ruling alone. Dr. Richardson's examination of the desk revealed maker's marks and construction details that confirmed its royal provenance. The desk had been crafted by the renowned furniture maker Gillow and Company, which had provided furnishings to the royal household throughout the 19th century. Carbon dating of the wood and analysis of the metal fittings supported a date of manufacture consistent with Victoria's reign. Meanwhile, jewelry expert Caroline Foster focused her attention on the contents of the Queen Mother's mahogany chest. The tiara found within was particularly striking, featuring diamonds and sapphires arranged in an Art Deco design characteristic of the 1920s and 1930s. Foster's examination revealed hallmarks indicating the piece had been created by Cartier, the prestigious French jewelry house that had long served the British royal family. The tiara's design matched descriptions in historical documents of a piece commissioned for the Queen Mother's coronation as Queen Consort in 1937, but which had been reported missing from royal inventories since the 1960s. Foster's discovery of a small inscription on the inner band confirmed the identification. Elizabeth, Queen Consort, 1937, in elegant script. Other jewelry pieces in the chest included a matching necklace and earrings, as well as several brooches that bore the royal cipher. Each piece showed signs of having been worn, with slight wear patterns that suggested they had been part of the Queen Mother's active jewelry collection rather than ceremonial pieces stored away after single uses. Detective Inspector Matthews coordinated the investigation while ensuring that proper legal protocols were followed. She had experience with art theft and recovered stolen goods, but the unique circumstances of this discovery required careful consideration of property law, royal prerogative, and historical precedent. The location of the find on Queen Camilla's property complicated matters, as did the unclear chain of custody during the decades the items had been missing. Matthews interviewed estate staff and local residents to gather information about the manor's history and any knowledge of the basement storage area. The current groundskeeper, Thomas Wright, had worked at the estate for 12 years but had never been aware of the basement room. Previous groundskeepers had retired or passed away, leaving gaps in institutional knowledge about the property's full layout and history. Research into the Pemberton family, the manor's previous owners, revealed a complex relationship with the royal household spanning several decades. Lord Edmund Pemberton had served as a royal equerry during the 1930s and had maintained close friendships with several members of the royal family throughout his life. His estate records, stored at the local historical society, provided crucial information about the manors used during World War II. The wartime records confirmed that Rayfield Manor had indeed served as a storage facility for valuables evacuated from London during the Blitz. The basement had been specially prepared with additional security measures and climate controls to protect stored items from both air raids and environmental damage. What the records did not clearly indicate was exactly which items had been stored there or when they had been returned. Dr. Whitfield discovered a significant clue in the royal archives at Windsor Castle. A memorandum dated October 1946 mentioned that several items stored at country properties during the war had not yet been returned to the royal collection. The memorandum specifically mentioned Queen Victoria's personal effects and Queen Elizabeth's, later the Queen Mother, jewelry as being among the items still in temporary storage. A follow-up memorandum from March 1947 indicated that most items had been successfully retrieved, but acknowledged that some pieces may remain in secure storage pending completion of post-war household reorganization. This appeared to be the last official reference to the missing items until their discovery at Rayfield Manor. The investigation revealed that Lord Pemberton had died unexpectedly in 1948, shortly after the official end of the wartime storage program. His wife, Lady Pemberton, had limited knowledge of the specific arrangements her husband had made with the royal household. In the confusion of post-war reconstruction and personal grief, the existence of the basement storage room and its contents had apparently been overlooked by both the Pemberton family and royal officials. The ceremonial swords found in the basement presented their own fascinating story. Military historian Colonel James Mitchell was called in to examine the weapons, which represented centuries of royal military tradition. Each sword bore engravings indicating its association with specific royal dukes and military regiments, creating a timeline of British military history spanning from the late 18th century through the early 20th century. One sword had belonged to the Duke of Cumberland, later King Ernest Augustus of Hanover, and bore battle honors from the Napoleonic Wars. Another had been carried by the Duke of Cambridge during ceremonial occasions in the mid-19th century. The most recent addition to the collection was a presentation sword given to the Duke of York, later King George VI, upon his naval commission in 1909. Colonel Mitchell's research revealed that these swords had been part of a larger collection maintained at Buckingham Palace until the 1940s. Like the other items, they had apparently been evacuated during the war and had somehow remained in storage at Rayfield Manor. The swords were in remarkable condition, having been properly oiled and stored in protective cases that had preserved them from rust and deterioration. As the authentication process continued, Dr. Whitfield made another startling discovery. Hidden beneath a false bottom in one of the storage chests was a collection of photographs that had never been seen by historians. The photographs, dating from the 1920s through the 1940s, showed private moments of royal family life that had been carefully preserved but never publicly displayed. The photographs included informal images of the young Princess Elizabeth, later Queen Elizabeth II, with her parents and sister, as well as candid shots of royal family gatherings at various country estates. Of particular interest were several photographs showing members of the royal family at Rayfield Manor during the 1930s, confirming the close relationship between the Pembertons and the royal household. One photograph, dated 1938, showed Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, wearing the very tiara that had been discovered in the basement chest. This provided additional confirmation of the jewelry's provenance and helped establish a timeline for when the items might have been brought to the manor. The emotional impact of these discoveries extended beyond their material value. For the current royal family, the photographs and personal items represented tangible connections to loved ones who had shaped their family's history. The letters and personal effects provided intimate glimpses into the private thoughts and feelings of royal family members who had lived through some of the most challenging periods in modern British history. Queen Camilla, who had been informed of the discovery while on royal duties abroad, expressed both amazement and humility at the find. Through her private secretary, she indicated her desire to ensure that the treasures were properly returned to the royal collection while acknowledging the historical significance of their discovery at her estate. The legal questions surrounding the find were gradually being resolved through consultations between royal lawyers, government officials, and legal experts in property law. The consensus was emerging that while the items had been found on Queen Camilla's property, their clear provenance as royal collection pieces meant they should be returned to the official royal holdings. As the second day of investigation drew to a close, the team had made remarkable progress in authenticating and cataloging the discovered items. Each piece had been photographed, measured, and documented in detail, while scientific analysis had confirmed their historical authenticity. The story of how these treasures had come to be lost and found was beginning to emerge from decades of obscurity. Dr. Whitfield reflected on the extraordinary nature of the discovery as she reviewed the day's findings. In her 30 years of working with the royal collection, she had never encountered anything quite like this combination of historical significance, personal intimacy, and sheer serendipity. The items they had found would not only enhance the official royal collection, but would also provide new insights into the private lives and personal relationships of some of Britain's most important historical figures. The investigation was far from complete, but the second day had established beyond doubt that they were dealing with genuine royal treasures of immense historical importance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they continued to piece together the complete story of how these items had come to rest in a forgotten basement room at a Gloucestershire manor house. The third day at Rayfield Manor brought unexpected developments that would transform the investigation from a simple treasure recovery into a deeply emotional journey through royal family history. Dr. Margaret Whitfield arrived early, eager to examine what appeared to be the most significant find yet, a locked cedar chest that had been discovered behind the other storage items, hidden in the deepest recess of the basement room. The chest itself was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, constructed from aromatic cedar wood and bound with brass fittings that bore the royal cipher of King George VI. Unlike the other items that had shown signs of regular handling, this chest appeared to have been deliberately hidden and preserved, as if someone had recognized its special significance and taken extra care to protect its contents. When the chest was finally opened under carefully controlled conditions, the contents took everyone's breath away. Nestled in silk-lined compartments were personal items that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II during her early years as Princess Elizabeth and young queen. These were not ceremonial objects or state treasures, but deeply personal mementos that revealed the private woman behind the public crown. The most striking item was a leather-bound diary, written in Princess Elizabeth's own handwriting, covering the period from her 18th birthday in 1944 through her accession to the throne in 1952. The diary entries provided an unprecedented glimpse into her thoughts and feelings during some of the most pivotal moments in British royal history, including her father's illness and death, her courtship with Prince Philip, and her early struggles with the weight of royal responsibility. Dr. Whitfield handled the diary with trembling hands, recognizing the extraordinary historical significance of what she was reading. The entries revealed a young woman grappling with duty and desire, love and responsibility, in ways that had never been documented in any official royal biography. The diary showed Princess Elizabeth's deep love for her father, her concerns about his declining health, and her gradual acceptance of the destiny that awaited her. One entry, dated February 5, 1952, the day before King George VI's death, was particularly poignant. Princess Elizabeth had written about a conversation with her father in which he had spoken about his hopes for her future reign and his pride in the woman she had become. The entry revealed the deep emotional bond between father and daughter, and the king's final wishes for his successor. Among the other items in the chest were love letters between Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip, written during their courtship and early marriage. These letters, never before seen by historians, revealed the depth of their relationship and Philip's concerns about marrying into the royal family. His letters showed a man struggling to balance his love for Elizabeth with his desire to maintain his own identity and independence. The discovery of these personal items raised immediate questions about how they had come to be stored at Rayfield Manor. Further investigation revealed that Lady Pemberton, the wife of Lord Edmund Pemberton, had served as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, during the 1940s and early 1950s. This close personal relationship explained how such intimate family items might have come to be temporarily stored at the Pemberton estate. Research into Lady Pemberton's personal papers, which had been donated to the local historical society after her death in 1978, revealed a letter dated March 1952, just weeks after King George VI's death. In the letter, Lady Pemberton mentioned that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, had asked her to safeguard certain personal items during this difficult period of transition. The letter suggested that the new Queen Elizabeth II had been overwhelmed by her sudden accession to the throne and had wanted to protect her most private possessions during the turbulent early months of her reign. The emotional weight of these discoveries was felt most keenly by the royal household staff who had served Queen Elizabeth II during her long reign. When word of the diary and letters reached Buckingham Palace, several longtime staff members requested permission to travel to Rayfield Manor to witness the discovery firsthand. Their reactions were deeply moving, as they recognized in these private writings the same qualities of duty, compassion, and strength that they had observed in their queen throughout their years of service. Detective Inspector Matthews found herself in the unusual position of investigating not a crime, but a mystery that touched the very heart of British royal heritage. As she coordinated the secure transport of the personal items to Windsor Castle for further examination, she reflected on the profound responsibility that came with handling such intimate historical documents. The discovery of Queen Elizabeth II's personal items also raised delicate questions about privacy and public interest. While the historical significance of the diary and letters was undeniable, they contained private thoughts and feelings that the late queen had never intended for public consumption. Royal lawyers and palace officials held urgent consultations about how to balance historical preservation with respect for the queen's privacy, even in death. Dr. Whitfield worked closely with palace officials to develop protocols for studying and preserving the personal items while maintaining appropriate discretion about their contents. The diary would be transcribed by trusted royal archivists, with sensitive personal details redacted to protect family privacy. The love letters between Elizabeth and Philip would be preserved but would remain confidential, to be studied only by authorized historians and biographers. As news of the discovery began to spread within royal circles, family members expressed both amazement and gratitude that such precious personal items had been preserved and recovered. Prince William and Prince Harry, through their representatives, acknowledged the emotional significance of discovering their grandmother's private thoughts and feelings from her early years as queen. The investigation also uncovered additional items that provided context for the personal treasures. A small wooden box contained Princess Elizabeth's childhood artwork, including drawings she had made for her parents and sketches of the royal horses she had loved. These simple, innocent creations provided a touching contrast to the weighty responsibilities she would later assume. Another significant find was a collection of photographs that Princess Elizabeth had taken herself during family holidays and private moments. These amateur photographs, never seen by the public, showed the royal family in relaxed, informal settings that contrasted sharply with the formal state portraits that typically documented their lives. The photographs revealed Princess Elizabeth's eye for capturing genuine emotions and unguarded moments among her family members. Of particular interest was a series of photographs from the royal family's time at Balmoral Castle, showing Princess Elizabeth with her beloved dogs and horses. These images captured the future queen in moments of pure joy and relaxation, engaged in the outdoor pursuits that would remain her passion throughout her life. The photographs provided visual evidence of the strong connection between the young princess and the Scottish estate that would become her favorite retreat. The basement also yielded practical items that shed light on the daily life of the royal household during the 1940s and 1950s. Household account books showed the careful management of royal expenses during the post-war period of austerity, when even the royal family was subject to rationing and economic constraints. These records provided historians with valuable insights into how the monarchy had adapted to the challenging economic conditions of the immediate post-war era. Dr. Whitfield's team discovered that many of the account books contained handwritten notes in Queen Elizabeth's own writing, showing her personal involvement in household management even as a young queen. These notes revealed her attention to detail and her desire to ensure that royal households operated efficiently and economically, qualities that would characterize her reign for 7 decades. The emotional impact of these discoveries extended beyond the royal family to the broader British public, as word of the find began to circulate through media channels. The idea that such intimate aspects of the late Queen's early life had been preserved and recovered struck a deep chord with people who had loved and respected her throughout her long reign. Queen Camilla's role in the discovery was increasingly seen as providential, as if fate had chosen her estate as the place where these precious royal memories would be recovered. Her gracious response to the find, ensuring that all items would be returned to the royal collection while declining any personal benefit from their discovery, earned widespread praise and strengthened her position within the royal family and among the British people. As the third day concluded, Dr. Whitfield and her team had documented and preserved the most intimate royal treasures ever discovered outside official royal residences. The personal diary, love letters, and family photographs provided an unprecedented window into the private world of Britain's longest-reigning monarch during the formative years of her reign. The investigation had evolved from a simple authentication process into a profound exploration of royal family relationships, personal sacrifice, and the human cost of duty and service. The items discovered in the basement of Rayfield Manor were not just historical artifacts, but tangible connections to a beloved queen who had dedicated her life to her country and her people. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as experts worked to preserve and catalog the complete collection while ensuring that the most sensitive personal items received appropriate protection. The discovery had already transformed understanding of Queen Elizabeth II's early years as monarch, and there were likely more revelations to come as researchers delved deeper into the treasure trove of royal history that had been hidden beneath a Gloucestershire manor house for more than 70 years. The fourth day at Rayfield Manor brought an unexpected visitor who would add another layer of emotional depth to the already extraordinary discovery. Lady Margaret Thornfield, now 87 years old, had served as a junior lady-in-waiting to Princess Elizabeth during the late 1940s and early 1950s. When word of the discovery reached her through royal household networks, she had immediately requested permission to travel from her home in Scotland to witness the recovery of items she remembered helping to pack away decades earlier. Lady Margaret's arrival transformed the investigation from a historical exercise into a living connection to the past. As Dr. Whitfield showed her the recovered items, the elderly lady's eyes filled with tears of recognition and remembrance. Her presence provided crucial context for understanding not just what had been found, but why these particular items had been deemed worthy of special protection during one of the most turbulent periods in recent royal history. "I remember that diary," Lady Margaret said softly as she gazed at Princess Elizabeth's leather-bound journal. She would write in it every evening after her official duties were complete. Even as a young princess, she understood the importance of recording her thoughts and experiences for posterity. She often said that future generations would need to understand the human side of monarchy, not just the ceremonial aspects. Lady Margaret's memories brought new understanding to the decision to hide these items at Rayfield Manor. She recalled the chaos and uncertainty that had followed King George VI's sudden death, when the young Princess Elizabeth had been thrust into queenship while still processing her grief for her beloved father. The decision to safeguard her most personal possessions had been made during those first overwhelming weeks of her reign. The Queen Mother was so protective of Elizabeth during that difficult time, Lady Margaret explained. She wanted to ensure that her daughter had space to grieve privately while learning to carry the weight of the crown. These personal items represented her life before duty consumed everything, and preserving them seemed essential for maintaining some connection to the young woman beneath the royal role. The elderly lady's recollections helped explain another mystery that had puzzled investigators. Among the items was a collection of children's toys that had seemed incongruous among the royal treasures. Lady Margaret identified them as gifts that Princess Elizabeth had received from Commonwealth children during her early royal tours, items she had treasured because they represented the genuine affection of young people who saw her not as a distant monarch, but as a caring figure who understood their world. One particular toy, a wooden horse carved by a young boy in Australia during the 1950 Commonwealth tour, had been especially precious to the young queen. Lady Margaret recalled how Princess Elizabeth had insisted on keeping it despite protocol officers' suggestions that such gifts should be formally archived. The toy represented her desire to maintain personal connections despite the formal constraints of her role. Dr. Whitfield's examination of additional items revealed the extent to which Princess Elizabeth had struggled to balance her public duties with her desire for a normal family life. A series of draft letters, never sent, showed her attempts to maintain friendships with young women her age who were not part of royal circles. These letters revealed her loneliness and her longing for relationships that were not defined by protocol and formality. The investigation team also discovered a collection of books that had belonged to Princess Elizabeth during her teenage years and early 20s. Unlike the formal educational materials that comprised her official studies, these books revealed her personal interests and intellectual curiosity. Poetry collections, novels, and biographies of strong women throughout history showed a young woman seeking to understand her place in the world and find inspiration for the role she would be called to play. Of particular significance was a heavily annotated copy of a biography of Queen Elizabeth I, the original Elizabeth who had ruled England during its golden age. The margins were filled with notes in Princess Elizabeth's handwriting, showing her attempts to learn from her Tudor namesake about the challenges of female leadership and the sacrifices required to serve one's country effectively. Lady Margaret's presence also helped authenticate some items whose provenance had been uncertain. She identified several pieces of jewelry as gifts from foreign dignitaries during state visits, items that had been given to Princess Elizabeth personally rather than to the institution of the monarchy. These pieces had been stored separately because their status as personal gifts made their ownership different from official state regalia. The emotional weight of the discoveries was perhaps most evident in Lady Margaret's reaction to finding Princess Elizabeth's wedding memorabilia. Among the stored items were personal keepsakes from the royal wedding to Prince Philip, including the private gifts she had received from family members and close friends. These items had been stored away because they represented purely personal happiness in a life that would increasingly be dominated by public duty. A particularly touching discovery was a small notebook containing Princess Elizabeth's private thoughts about her wedding day and early marriage. The entries revealed her deep love for Prince Philip and her determination to create a strong partnership despite the unique pressures they would face as a royal couple. The notebook also showed her awareness that their relationship would require constant work to maintain intimacy while living under intense public scrutiny. Dr. Whitfield was particularly moved by discovering correspondence between Princess Elizabeth and her grandmother, Queen Mary, during the period immediately following King George VI's death. Queen Mary's letters provided guidance and support to the young queen, sharing wisdom gained during her own decades of royal service. Princess Elizabeth's responses showed her deep respect for her grandmother's experience and her desperate desire to prove worthy of the trust placed in her. The letters between grandmother and granddaughter revealed intimate discussions about the loneliness of royal life and the challenge of maintaining personal relationships while fulfilling constitutional duties. Queen Mary's advice was both practical and emotional, helping Princess Elizabeth navigate the complex requirements of her new role while preserving her essential humanity. Lady Margaret's memories also shed light on the broader context surrounding the storage of these items. She explained that the decision had been made during a period when the royal family was reassessing many of its traditions and practices in light of post-war social changes. There was recognition that the monarchy needed to evolve to remain relevant, but also awareness that some aspects of royal heritage needed to be preserved for future generations. The investigation revealed that the storage arrangement had been intended as temporary, with plans to return the items to royal residences once the immediate crisis of the succession had passed. However, the combination of Lord Pemberton's unexpected death and the overwhelming demands on the new queen's time had resulted in the temporary storage becoming effectively permanent. Detective Inspector Matthews worked with royal security experts to ensure that the most sensitive personal items would receive appropriate protection during their transfer to Windsor Castle. The diary and personal letters required special conservation treatment to prevent deterioration, while the photographs needed careful handling to preserve their historical clarity. The discovery had implications beyond simple historical preservation. The personal items provided insights that would be valuable to future royal biographers and historians studying the evolution of the modern monarchy. They revealed the human cost of royal duty and the personal sacrifices required to maintain an institution that had survived and thrived through centuries of social and political change. Queen Camilla's role in facilitating the discovery continued to earn widespread respect. Her decision to allow unrestricted access to the basement storage area and her gracious response to finding such precious royal heritage on her property demonstrated her understanding of her responsibilities as queen consort and custodian of royal tradition. As the fourth day concluded, Lady Margaret prepared to return to Scotland, but not before recording detailed oral history interviews about her memories of Princess Elizabeth's early years as queen. Her recollections would provide invaluable context for understanding the discovered items and their significance to the young woman who had been transformed overnight from princess to monarch. The investigation team had now documented and preserved a complete archive of personal royal history spanning one of the most significant periods in modern British monarchy. The items discovered at Rayfield Manor would require years of careful study and analysis, but they had already transformed understanding of Queen Elizabeth II's early reign and the personal costs of her lifelong dedication to duty and service. Dr. Whitfield reflected on the extraordinary privilege of having been present for such a discovery. In her decades of working with royal collections, she had handled countless treasures and artifacts, but none had provided such intimate access to the private thoughts and feelings of one of history's most remarkable monarchs. The basement of a Gloucestershire manor house had yielded secrets that would enrich understanding of royal history for generations to come. 6 months after the extraordinary discovery at Rayfield Manor, the final chapter of the story was beginning to unfold. The basement that had held its secrets for over 70 years was now empty, its treasures safely transferred to the royal collection at Windsor Castle. But the impact of the discovery continued to resonate through the royal family, the historical community, and the British public in ways that no one could have anticipated. Dr. Margaret Whitfield stood in the newly established Queen Elizabeth II private archive at Windsor Castle, a special collection room that had been created to house the discovered personal items. The space had been designed with the most advanced conservation technology, ensuring that Princess Elizabeth's diary, her love letters with Prince Philip, and the countless other intimate artifacts would be preserved for future generations of researchers and, eventually, for public display. The authentication and cataloging process had taken months of painstaking work, but it had yielded remarkable insights into the character and personality of Britain's longest-reigning monarch. The diary entries, in particular, had provided historians with an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of a young woman struggling to balance personal desires with royal duty during some of the most challenging years of the 20th century. One of the most significant revelations had come from Princess Elizabeth's reflections on her father's death and her own accession to the throne. Her diary entries from February and March 1952 showed a young woman overwhelmed by grief, but determined to honor her father's memory through dedicated service. The entries revealed her deep understanding of the constitutional importance of a smooth succession, even as she struggled with personal loss. The public response to news of the discovery had been extraordinary. When the palace announced that selected items would eventually be displayed in a special exhibition, the waiting list for tickets had grown to over 2 million people within the first week. The British public's desire to connect with their beloved late queen through these intimate artifacts demonstrated the enduring affection and respect she had commanded throughout her reign. Queen Camilla had played a crucial role in facilitating the public's access to the discovered treasures. Working with palace officials and museum curators, she had advocated for the creation of a traveling exhibition that would allow people throughout the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth to experience these remarkable historical artifacts. Her involvement in the project had further strengthened her position within the royal family and among the British people. The exhibition, titled Elizabeth, the Private Princess and Early Queen, had opened to unprecedented public interest. The centerpiece was a carefully curated selection of diary entries, displayed alongside contemporary photographs and artifacts that provided context for the young queen's experiences. Visitors were moved to tears by reading Princess Elizabeth's own words about her love for her father, her deep commitment to service, and her struggles to maintain personal relationships while fulfilling her royal duties. Prince William and Prince Harry had both made public statements about the discovery, expressing their gratitude that their grandmother's most personal thoughts and feelings had been preserved and recovered. Prince William had spoken particularly movingly about reading diary entries that showed Princess Elizabeth's concerns about the impact of royal duty on family life, concerns that he recognized in his own experience as a father and future king. The love letters between Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip had been treated with particular sensitivity. While their existence was acknowledged, their contents remained private, accessible only to authorized royal biographers and historians. However, the mere knowledge that such intimate correspondence had survived provided new understanding of the strength and depth of a marriage that had endured for over 70 years. Dr. Whitfield had been appointed as the official curator of the Queen Elizabeth II Private Archive, a role that would occupy the remainder of her career. Her work involved not only preserving and studying the discovered items, but also training the next generation of royal historians in the proper care and interpretation of these irreplaceable artifacts. The investigation had also led to a broader review of royal storage facilities and archival practices. The discovery at Rayfield Manor had highlighted the possibility that other important items might be stored in forgotten locations throughout the royal estate network. A comprehensive survey of all royal properties was undertaken, leading to several smaller but significant discoveries of missing artifacts and documents. Detective Inspector Matthews had received recognition for her professional handling of the investigation, but she found that the personal impact of the discovery had been even more significant than any career advancement. Working with such intimate royal artifacts had given her a new appreciation for the human side of monarchy and the personal sacrifices required of those who serve the crown. The legal questions surrounding the discovery had been resolved with characteristic royal grace and attention to protocol. Queen Camilla had formally donated any claim to the discovered items to the royal collection, while the crown had recognized her significant contribution to preserving royal heritage. The resolution had set important precedents for future archaeological or accidental discoveries on royal properties. Lady Margaret Thornfield, the elderly former lady-in-waiting whose memories had provided crucial context for the discovery, had become something of a celebrity in historical circles. Her oral history interviews had been transcribed and would form an important part of the official record of Princess Elizabeth's early reign. At nearly 90 years old, she had found new purpose in sharing her memories of a remarkable young woman who had become an extraordinary queen. The international impact of the discovery had been significant as well. Commonwealth nations had expressed interest in hosting the traveling exhibition, seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen their connections to the crown and to honor the memory of a monarch who had served them with dedication throughout her reign. Plans were being developed for the exhibition to visit Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and other Commonwealth realms. The basement at Rayfield Manor had been preserved as a historical site, with plans to eventually open it to public tours. The space where the treasures had rested for over 70 years would become a pilgrimage site for those interested in royal history and the remarkable story of their discovery. Queen Camilla had expressed her intention to establish a small museum at the manor that would tell the complete story of the find and its significance. Academic institutions had also been profoundly impacted by the discovery. Universities with royal history programs had received funding to establish new research initiatives focused on studying the discovered materials and their implications for understanding modern monarchy. The diary entries, in particular, were being used to develop new courses on leadership, duty, and personal sacrifice in public service. The conservation work on the discovered items had led to important advances in preservation techniques for historical documents and artifacts. The methods developed to protect Princess Elizabeth's diary and photographs were being shared with museums and archives worldwide, contributing to the broader effort to preserve human heritage for future generations. As the first anniversary of the discovery approached, Dr. Whitfield reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with Royal Protection Officer James Harrison noticing a slightly displaced basement window. The investigation had revealed not just lost treasures, but intimate insights into one of history's most remarkable women during the formative years of her reign. The discovery had also strengthened the bond between Queen Camilla and the broader royal family. Her gracious handling of the find and her commitment to preserving royal heritage had demonstrated her deep understanding of her role as queen consort and her respect for the traditions she had married into. The story of the late queen's lost treasures had become more than just a tale of archaeological discovery. It had become a story about family, duty, sacrifice, and the enduring power of love and commitment in the face of overwhelming responsibility. Princess Elizabeth's diary entries and personal artifacts had revealed the human heart that beat beneath the crown, showing a young woman who had chosen duty over personal desire but had never lost her essential humanity. The legacy of the discovery would continue for generations. Future historians would have access to primary source materials that provided unprecedented insight into the early reign of Queen Elizabeth II. The British public would have new opportunities to understand and appreciate the personal costs of royal service. And the royal family itself would have a richer understanding of their heritage and the remarkable woman who had shaped their institution through 7 decades of dedicated service. In the quiet of the conservation laboratory at Windsor Castle, surrounded by the carefully preserved artifacts of a life dedicated to duty and service, Dr. Whitfield understood that she had been privileged to participate in one of the most significant historical discoveries of the modern era. The late Queen's lost treasures had been found, but their real treasure lay not in their material value but in their power to connect present generations with a remarkable woman who had lived her life in service to others. The basement at Rayfield Manor had given up its secrets, but the story of Queen Elizabeth II's extraordinary life and reign would continue to inspire and guide future generations of royals and subjects alike. The young princess who had struggled with duty and love, grief and responsibility had become a queen whose legacy would endure through the treasures she had left behind, both in the basement of a country manor and in the hearts of those she had served so faithfully throughout her remarkable life.